The salt water burned my eyes, but the image in front of me was crystal clear. I was treading water in the middle of the Atlantic, screaming my son's name. Oliver, Oliver. But the ocean was silent. I looked up at the yacht we had just come from. My sister-in-law, Morgan, was standing at the railing. She wasn't throwing a life ring. She wasn't calling for help. She was smiling. And then, slowly, she raised her hand and waved goodbye. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment on your city or country. They say dogs can smell fear. I think soldiers can smell betrayal. It has a specific scent, like stale air in a room that's been closed too long. I'm Hunter. For the last 20 years, my life has been simple. Follow orders, protect the guy next to me, and come home to my family. I was a master sergeant in the Rangers. I spent my life hunting bad men in dark corners of the world. But standing on my own front porch in Charleston, South Carolina, I felt a knot in my stomach that no combat mission had ever given me. I wasn't supposed to be home yet. I had caught a cargo hop back 3 days early to surprise them. My wife, Tessa, and my 14-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver is the reason I breathe. 4 years ago, a drunk driver T-boned our sedan. I walked away with scratches. Oliver never walked again, paralyzed from the waist down. The guilt of that night eats at me every single day, even though everyone tells me it wasn't my fault. I unlocked the front door quietly. I wanted to see the look on Oliver's face when I walked in, but the house was dead quiet. Tessa, I called out, dropping my duffel bag on the hardwood floor. There was a scramble in the kitchen, the sound of a glass clinking hard against a counter. Tessa appeared in the hallway. She looked flushed. Messy hair. Her eyes were wide, darting from me to the stairs. She didn't look like a wife happy to see her husband. She looked like a kid caught stealing candy. Hunter, she breathed out. You're early. Surprise, I said, trying to smile, but the cold feeling in my gut was spreading. I stepped forward to hug her. She stiffened. She smelled like expensive bourbon and men's cologne. I pulled back. Is someone here? Before she could answer, a voice drifted down from the upstairs landing. A voice that made my skin crawl. Well, look who decided to grace us with his presence. I looked up. Morgan, Tessa's older sister. If Tessa was the passive, quiet one, Morgan was the shark. She was wealthy, divorced, and had always looked at me like I was hired help. She stood at the top of the stairs, holding a glass of amber liquid. She wasn't wearing shoes. Hello, Morgan, I said, my voice flat. What are you doing here? Helping, she said, walking down the stairs slowly. Since you're always playing Joe, someone had to help poor Tessa with the cripple. My jaw tightened. His name is Oliver. And don't call him that. He's in a wheelchair, Hunter. Let's call a spade, she smirked, taking a sip of her drink. We were just planning a little getaway. A family healing trip. A trip. I looked at Tessa. Tessa wouldn't meet my eyes. She was staring at her feet. Morgan rented a yacht. For the weekend. She thought. She thought the sea air would be good for Oliver. For his lungs. I walked past them, straight to Oliver's room on the ground floor. I needed to see my son. I pushed the door open. Oliver was sitting in his chair, facing the corner of the room. He was wearing headphones, but no music was playing. He looked small. Too small. Oliver. He spun his chair around. When he saw me, he didn't smile immediately. He checked the door behind me first to see if Morgan was there. When he saw it was just me, he let out a breath he must have been holding for weeks. Dad, he whispered. I knelt down and hugged him. He gripped my shirt so tight his knuckles turned white. You're back, he said. I'm back, bud. I'm here. He pulled me close and whispered directly into my ear. Don't let us go on the boat, Dad. Please. I pulled back, looking at his terrified face. Why? What happened? Aunt Morgan, he said, his voice barely audible. She told Mom that it would be easier if I wasn't around. She thinks I can't hear her because of the headphones. But I hear everything. She said I'm a drain on the bank account. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage flooded my veins. I stood up, ready to march into the kitchen and throw Morgan out of my house physically. But then, Tessa walked into the room. "Hunter," she said, her voice high and nervous. "Please. Morgan paid a lot of money for this charter. It's non-refundable. Just one weekend. Then she goes back to New York. Please, do it for me. I need a break." I looked at my wife. She looked exhausted, broken. I wondered if Morgan was manipulating her, twisting her mind while I was away. I looked at Oliver. He was watching me, waiting for me to protect him. "I'm coming," I said firmly. "I'm not letting him go alone with her." Tessa looked relieved, but there was something else in her eyes. Panic. "Okay," she said. "We leave at 0600. Later that night, everyone was asleep. I couldn't sleep. My soldier instincts were screaming that we were walking into an ambush. I went to the kitchen to get water. Morgan's purse was sitting on the island counter, open. A piece of paper was sticking out. It looked like a receipt for the yacht charter. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. I pulled it out. It was an invoice for the Gilded Lady. Full weekend charter. Fully crewed. But there was a handwritten note clipped to the back of it. It was in Morgan's handwriting. I recognized the sharp, jagged loops. It was a list of supplies, champagne, caviar, new luggage, and then, at the very bottom, circled 3 times in red ink. Lawyer meeting, Monday morning. Topic: life insurance payout verification. Asterisk. I stared at the note. Life insurance. Oliver didn't have life insurance. I had a small policy, but then it hit me. My father, Oliver's grandfather, he had set up a trust fund. A massive one. But it only paid out to Oliver when he turned 18. If Oliver died before 18, the money went to the next of kin. Tessa. I felt like I had been punched in the throat. They weren't taking him for fresh air. They weren't taking him to heal. I looked down the dark hallway toward the guest room where Morgan was sleeping. I wasn't just dealing with a mean sister-in-law. I was dealing with something much darker. I folded the note and put it back. If I confronted them now, they'd lie. They'd spin it. I needed proof. "Okay," I whispered to the empty room. "You want to take a boat ride? Let's take a boat ride." I didn't know it then, but I had just agreed to step onto a floating coffin. The drive to the coast was 3 hours of suffocating silence. It felt less like a family vacation and more like a prison transfer. Tessa sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window behind dark sunglasses, refusing to speak. In the rearview mirror, I could see Oliver. He looked small in the back seat, his eyes fixed on the passing pine trees, his hands gripping the armrests of his seat like we were already in turbulence. Morgan followed us in her convertible, a red blur in my side mirror that never let up. Every time I slowed down, she was right there on my bumper, pushing. We arrived at the marina just as the sun was hitting its peak heat. The air smelled of salt, diesel, and dead fish. The Gilded Lady was waiting at the end of the dock. It was a 60-foot gleaming white beast of a yacht, too big for a casual weekend, too flashy for a family that was supposed to be struggling. As I pulled Oliver's wheelchair out of the trunk, Morgan marched up, clapping her hands. "All right, ground rules," she announced, her voice cutting over the cry of the seagulls. She held out a woven basket. "Phones. Everyone puts them in. Now." I stopped unfolding the chair. "Excuse me. It's a detox, Hunter," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We are here to connect. To heal. No distractions. No work calls. No commanding officers. No video games for the boy. Phones in the basket. The captain will lock them in the safe until we dock on Sunday. I need my phone for emergencies," I said, my grip tightening on the wheelchair frame. "The boat has a satellite radio," Tessa said softly, finally speaking. She walked over and dropped her phone into the basket without hesitation. "Just do it, Hunter. Please. Don't start a fight already." I looked at Tessa. She was trembling. Why was she trembling? I looked at Oliver. He looked terrified of Morgan. I didn't want to escalate things before we even left dry land. I needed to see what their plan was, and if I got kicked off the boat now, I couldn't protect him. "Fine," I said. I pulled my phone out and dropped it in. It landed with a heavy thud. Morgan smirked, snatched the basket, and handed it to a crew member, a young guy with a shaved head who didn't look me in the eye. Lock these up, Kyle. We moved toward the gangway. It was a steep metal ramp leading up to the deck. Careful with him, Morgan said dismissively as I pushed Oliver toward the ramp. Don't scratch the paint. I ignored her and focused on the ramp. As I lined up the wheels, I paused. I've spent years checking equipment. Parachutes, rifles, rappelling gear. You learn to look for stress points. The metal bracket holding the safety railing on the starboard side of the boat, right where the ramp ended, looked wrong. I knelt down, pretending to tie my shoe. I ran my thumb over the bolt securing the gate. It was loose, not just rattled loose from engine vibration. It had wrench marks on it, fresh scratches on the silver paint. Someone had deliberately untightened it. My heart hammered against my ribs. If a wheelchair hit that railing with any speed, the gate would swing open, and there would be nothing between the passenger and the water. What is the holdup? Morgan barked from the upper deck. I stood up slowly. I pulled a multi-tool from my pocket, something I never leave the house without. Just a loose screw, I said loudly. Wouldn't want a lawsuit, would we, Morgan? I saw her eyes narrow. For a second, the mask slipped, and I saw pure annoyance. She hadn't expected me to check. I tightened the bolt until it groaned, locking it down hard. Then I pushed Oliver safely onto the deck. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. Lock your brakes the second you stop moving. Do not unlock them unless I am standing right next to you. Do you understand? Yes, Dad, he whispered back. The engines roared to life, a deep rumble that vibrated through the soles of my shoes. The lines were cast off. We began to drift away from the dock. As the marina got smaller, the feeling of isolation hit me. We were leaving the safety of the world. No phones. A crew that wouldn't make eye contact. A wife who looked like she was attending a funeral. And a sister-in-law who had tampered with a safety rail. I spent the first hour patrolling the perimeter of the boat. We were heading east, straight into the open Atlantic. The land disappeared behind a haze of heat. By late afternoon, the atmosphere was stifling. Morgan was drinking champagne on the flybridge, laughing loudly at nothing. Tessa was sitting on the bow, staring at the waves, glass after glass of wine disappearing. I went down to the galley to get Oliver a juice box. He was sitting in the main salon, watching the water rush by through the glass sliding doors. When I came back up, I found Tessa standing near the stern, right by the spot where I had tightened the bolt. She was running her hand over the metal. Tess, I asked. She jumped, spinning around. She looked guilty. It's deep, isn't it? She murmured, looking at the wake churning white and blue behind us. The water. It's so deep. We're safe, I said, stepping closer. As long as we're careful. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Hunter. I'm so sorry. Sorry for what? I asked, stepping closer. Tessa, what is going on? Talk to me. She started to speak, her lip trembling. Tessa. Morgan's voice boomed over the speakers. Come up here. I need you to mix another drink. Tessa flinched. The moment was broken. She wiped her eyes, the wall slamming back up. Nothing. Just seasickness. I have to go. She rushed past me up the stairs. I stood alone on the back deck. The sun was starting to dip lower, turning the sky a bruised purple. The water looked blacker now. We were miles from shore. No other boats in sight. Just us and the sharks. I went back inside to Oliver. I sat next to him and put my arm around his shoulders. Dad, he asked, I don't like this captain. He keeps looking at me. I know, Bud, I said, my hand instinctively checking for the pocket knife clipped to my belt. I know, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I was wrong. I thought I was ready for anything. But I didn't know that Morgan wasn't relying on loose screws anymore. She had a plan B, and plan B was starting in exactly 5 minutes. The sun had just slipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple and black. The yacht's underwater lights flicked on, casting an eerie turquoise glow into the deep water below us. It should have been beautiful. Instead, it felt like we were floating on top of a giant, glowing eye. We were gathered on the aft deck for dinner. Morgan had insisted on eating outside, despite the wind picking up. The table was set with heavy silver and crystal, a stark contrast to the churning ocean just a few feet away. Oliver was parked at the head of the table, his brakes locked, looking miserable. He hadn't touched his food. I sat directly next to him, my body angled so I was a human shield between him and the open water. "Eat up, Oliver," Morgan said, slicing into a steak with surgical precision. "It's Wagyu. Very expensive. Don't be rude." "I'm not hungry," Oliver mumbled. "He doesn't have to eat if he doesn't want to," I said, my voice hard. Morgan rolled her eyes and looked at Tessa. "Your husband is so abrasive, Tess. I don't know how you stand it." Tessa said nothing. She was staring into her wine glass like she was trying to divine the future. Suddenly, a sharp, mechanical alarm started blaring from inside the cabin. Beep, beep, beep. It was the smoke alarm. "What the hell?" Morgan shouted, standing up. "Kyle, Captain." Thick gray smoke started billowing out of the salon doors. It smelled acrid, burning plastic. "Fire!" The captain yelled from the bridge above. "Fire in the galley. Everyone to the bow. Move." Panic is a funny thing. It makes civilians freeze. It makes soldiers move. Tessa grabbed the extinguisher. I shouted, "Oliver, stay here. Do not move." "Hunter, help them." Tessa screamed, pointing at the smoke. "The propane tanks are down there." Propane. If that went up, the whole boat was gone. I didn't think. Instinct took over. I sprinted into the salon, grabbing a shirt to cover my mouth. The smoke was thick, blinding. I fought my way toward the galley, my eyes stinging. I found the source, a pan of oil left on a burner that had been cranked to high, sitting next to a pile of paper towels. It wasn't an accident. It was arson. I grabbed the fire extinguisher from the wall, ripped the pin, and blasted the flames. White powder filled the room, choking out the fire in seconds. I coughed, waving the smoke away. It was contained. It was small. Too small. My stomach dropped. Diversion. "Oliver!" I screamed, spinning around and sprinting back toward the deck. The run felt like it took hours. My boots slammed on the teak floor as I burst through the sliding doors back into the night air. The deck was empty. The table was overturned. Wine glasses lay shattered on the floor. "Oliver!" I roared, my voice tearing my throat. I scanned the deck. No wheelchair. Then I saw her. Morgan was standing at the very edge of the stern, right where the safety gate was. The gate was open, swinging lazily with the roll of the boat. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking down into the black, churning water, and she was waving. A small, polite little wave. "No," I gasped. The sound came out as a broken wheeze. I ran to the rail. I looked down. In the turquoise glow of the underwater lights, I saw it. The silver glint of the wheelchair sinking fast. And Oliver. He had fallen out of the chair on impact. He was thrashing in the water, his arms flailing, his paralyzed legs dead weight pulling him down. The current from the propellers was dragging him under. I didn't think about the cold. I didn't think about the sharks. I vaulted over the railing. The impact with the water knocked the wind out of me. It was freezing, a shock that felt like 1,000 needles. I kicked hard, diving down, my eyes burning in the salt. I saw him. He was 10 feet down, his face a mask of terror, bubbles escaping his lips. He was sinking. I swam harder than I had ever swum in my life. My uniform was heavy, my boots like lead anchors. I reached out, my fingers brushing his shirt. I grabbed a fistful of fabric and yanked him toward me. He wrapped his arms around my neck, panic making him strong. He was choking, clinging to me, dragging us both down. "Calm down, buddy. I got you." I kicked for the surface, my lungs burning for air. The water was dark and heavy. I broke the surface, gasping, sucking in the night air. "I got you." I yelled, spitting water. "I got you, Oliver. Breathe." He was coughing, heaving, clinging to me like a koala. "Help!" I screamed at the boat. "Man overboard." I looked up. The yacht was drifting away. The engines were still running. Morgan was still standing at the rail. She hadn't moved. She was just watching us struggle in the dark, freezing water. Throw the ring. I screamed. Throw the damn ring. For a second, she did nothing. Then, slowly, as if she was bored, she unhooked the life ring and tossed it. But she didn't throw it to us. She threw it 20 feet to the left, uselessly bobbing in the waves. Tessa, I roared. Tessa. Tessa appeared at the rail next to Morgan. She looked down at us. I saw her cover her mouth with her hands. I waited for her to scream at the captain, to jump in, to do something. She just turned away. I was alone, treading water in the middle of the ocean with my paralyzed son on my back, watching the lights of the yacht drift further and further away. Dad. Oliver choked out, his voice wet and terrified. Don't let me go. Never. I gritted out, kicking my legs to keep us afloat. I will never let you go. The yacht slowed down, turning around. They couldn't leave us. It would look too suspicious. They had to come back. But as the boat turned, the massive spotlights swept over us, blinding me. And that's when I saw the fin, 30 yards out, a gray triangle slicing through the black water. Then another. The commotion, the splashing, the vibrations. We had rung the dinner bell. I pulled Oliver tighter, positioning my body between him and the open water. I reached for the knife at my belt. Hold on, I whispered. Just hold on. This wasn't a rescue mission anymore. It was a war. The next 10 minutes were a blur of adrenaline and terror. The sharks circled, curious but cautious, sensing something bigger, the boat, approaching. The captain, finally acting like a mariner instead of a mercenary, maneuvered the yacht close enough for the crew to throw a rope. Not the life ring Morgan had tossed away, but a heavy line. I wrapped the rope around Oliver first, securing it under his arms. Pull him up, I screamed, treading water, kicking at something rough that brushed against my boot. A shark. A piece of debris. I didn't care. They hauled Oliver up the side of the hull like a sack of wet laundry. I watched him clear the rail, collapsing onto the deck. Only then did I grab the line. I climbed up, my muscles screaming, shivering so violently my teeth clattered together. When I flopped onto the deck, I didn't rest. I crawled to Oliver. He was lying on his side, vomiting seawater, shivering uncontrollably. Blanket. I roared at the crew. Give me a damn blanket. Kyle, the young deckhand, ran and grabbed a pile of towels. I wrapped Oliver up, rubbing his back, checking his pulse. Morgan was standing 5 feet away, her arms crossed, her face perfectly composed. Thank God, she said, her voice flat. I told him to be careful. I told him not to play near the edge. I froze. I slowly stood up, water dripping from my uniform, forming a puddle around my boots. I walked toward her. Play, I whispered. You opened the gate. Don't be ridiculous, Hunter, she snapped, taking a step back. The boy is reckless. He was spinning his wheels. He unlocked the brakes. I tried to grab him, but he was too heavy. Liar. I lunged at her. Hunter, stop. Tessa screamed, throwing herself between us. Stop it. He's safe. Just stop. I looked at my wife. She was shaking, her eyes wide with panic. But she wasn't looking at me with relief. She was looking at me with warning. We're going back, I said, my voice shaking with cold and rage. Turn this boat around. Now. The ride back to the marina was a nightmare. I sat on the floor of the salon with Oliver, holding him, refusing to let anyone near us. He didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, traumatized. When we docked, there were flashing lights, an ambulance, and police cars. Finally, I thought, they're here to arrest her. I carried Oliver off the boat and laid him on the stretcher. The paramedics swarmed him. I turned to the nearest police officer, a tall man with a notepad. Officer, I said, pointing at the yacht. That woman, Morgan, she attempted to murder my son. She opened the safety gate. It was a setup. The officer looked at me. He looked at my soaked, military uniform. Then he looked over my shoulder. Morgan was crying. Actually crying. Huge, sobbing tears. She was talking to another officer, pointing at me, shaking her head. Tessa was standing next to her, nodding, looking down at the ground. The officer turned back to me. Sir, I need you to step back. We have a statement from the witness claiming the child has a history of suicidal ideation. My blood ran cold. What? The aunt says the boy has been depressed, that he drove himself off the boat intentionally, and that you were negligent in supervising him. That is a lie, I shouted, stepping forward. Ask my wife. Tessa, tell them. I looked at Tessa. She was standing 10 feet away. The police lights flashed across her face. Red, blue, red, blue. Tessa, I pleaded. Tell them what happened. You saw the gate. Tessa looked up. Her eyes met mine. For a second, I saw the woman I married. The woman who vowed to love me. Then, the steel door slammed shut. Hunter, she said, her voice shaking but audible. Oliver, he's been talking about not wanting to live like this anymore. Morgan tried to stop him. You were downstairs. The world tilted on its axis. My knees almost buckled. She did it. She actually did it. She chose her sister. She chose the lie. You're lying, I whispered. Why are you lying? Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back, the officer said, reaching for his handcuffs. For what? I demanded, backing away. We need to bring you in for questioning, child endangerment, and possible domestic disturbance. You seem very agitated, sir. I just jumped into the ocean to save my son. I yelled. They grabbed me. 2 of them. They spun me around and slammed me against the hood of the cruiser. The cold steel pressed against my cheek. I watched as the ambulance doors closed on Oliver. He was alone. I watched Morgan wrap an arm around Tessa, whispering something in her ear. Morgan looked at me as they shoved me into the back of the police car. She didn't smile this time. She just stared. A cold, dead stare that said, I win. I sat in the back of that cruiser, shivering in my wet clothes, realizing that the ocean was safer than the land. In the ocean, you know where the sharks are. On land, they look just like family. And I realized something else. This wasn't just about hating Oliver. You don't go to this much trouble just because you don't like a kid. This was planned. This was calculated. And as the car drove away, taking me away from my son, I made a vow. I wasn't going to fight them with fists anymore. I was going to fight them like a ranger. I was going to gather intel. I was going to find the weakness. And then, I was going to destroy them. The holding cell smelled like bleach and despair. I sat on the metal bench for 12 hours, still in my damp uniform, shivering as the adrenaline crashed and reality set in. They eventually let me go. No charges filed yet, just pending investigation. But the damage was done. When I walked out of the station into the blinding morning sun, my phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Hunter, this is Case Worker Jenkins from Child Protective Services. An emergency custody order has been filed for Oliver. Given the allegations of negligence and the potential suicide attempt, he is being placed in temporary state care until a hearing can be held. You are not to approach the hospital or the foster facility. Doing so will result in immediate arrest. I dropped the phone. The screen cracked against the pavement. State care. They had taken my son. My traumatized, paralyzed son was now in the system, surrounded by strangers, thinking his father had abandoned him. I drove straight to the hospital anyway. I didn't care about the order. I needed to see him. But when I got to the front desk, 2 security guards were already waiting. They had my photo. Sir, you need to leave, the larger one said, his hand resting on his taser. He's my son, I said, my voice cracking. He's scared. He needs me. Leave. Now. I stood there, my fists clenched, every instinct screaming to fight my way through them. But that's exactly what Morgan wanted. She wanted the violent, unstable soldier. She wanted me to snap so she could prove I was dangerous. I turned around and walked out. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I drove to my house. My key didn't work. The locks had been changed. I peered through the window. The house was empty. Tessa's car was gone. Morgan's car was gone. I was homeless, childless, and alone. I spent the next 3 nights sleeping in my truck in a Walmart parking lot. I ate beef jerky and stared at a picture of Oliver on my cracked phone screen. I felt myself spiraling. The darkness that soldiers keep locked away in a box was starting to leak out. I thought about just driving my truck into a bridge abutment, ending it. But then, I remembered the note. Life insurance payout verification. They hadn't won yet. They had just moved to the next phase. I needed to think tactical. I needed to stop reacting and start operating. I pulled out my old military duffel bag from the truck bed, the one thing I had kept with me. Inside, I had a few souvenirs from my time in service. Nothing illegal, just tools. High-powered binoculars, a directional microphone, and a few tiny, battery-operated listening devices I used for perimeter security. If I couldn't get into the house, I would bring the house to me. I waited until 300 hours. The neighborhood was dead silent. I parked the truck 3 streets over and hiked through the woods behind our property. I moved like a ghost, avoiding the motion sensor lights I had installed myself years ago. The house was dark. Tessa and Morgan were likely staying at a hotel or the yacht club, keeping up appearances. I shimmied up the drain pipe to the second-floor balcony, the one connected to the master bedroom. The door was locked, but the old latch was loose. I popped it with a credit card. I slipped inside. The smell of the house, my house, hit me. It smelled like them. Perfume and lies. I worked quickly. I planted a bug behind the headboard of the bed. Another one under the kitchen island counter. Another one behind the TV in the living room. These were small, black discs, practically invisible. They would transmit audio to a receiver I could monitor from up to a mile away. I was about to leave when I saw something on the bedside table. A legal pad. I clicked on my pen light. It was a list of names. Realtors. Sell house, ASAP. Quick cash sale preferred. And under that, a brochure for a luxury assisted living facility in Switzerland. Permanent care for, out of sight, out of mind. They weren't just going to kill him. If the accident failed, which it had, they were going to ship him off to some facility overseas where I'd never find him and cash out the trust fund. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. It wasn't the hot rage of the boat anymore. This was ice. This was the focus of a sniper adjusting for windage. I heard a car door slam outside. Headlights swept across the bedroom ceiling. They were back. I dove onto the floor, crawling toward the balcony door. I heard the front door open downstairs. Voices. Laughter. Did you see his face at the station? Morgan's voice drifted up the stairs. Pathetic. I saved him. She mocked my voice. I feel bad, Morgan. Tessa's voice replied. He really does love him. Love doesn't pay the bills, Tessa. Morgan snapped. And love doesn't fix a broken spine. We're doing everyone a favor. Once the state declares Hunter unfit, we get custody. We ship the kid to Zurich. The trust unlocks. And we are free. You are free. I know, Tessa sighed. I know. I froze on the balcony, the night air chilling my sweat. I had heard enough. I slipped over the railing and dropped into the bushes below, silent as a shadow. I made it back to my truck as the sun was starting to bleed into the sky. I put on the headphones connected to the receiver. The signal was strong. I wasn't a father sleeping in a truck anymore. I was a forward operating base. And the enemy had just walked into my kill zone. Now, I needed an ally. I needed someone who hated bullies as much as I did. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in 10 years. Victor, I said when the voice answered. It's Hunter. I need a lawyer. And I need a shark. Victor wasn't just a lawyer. He was a weapon in a tailored suit. We served together in the Rangers before he took a shrapnel wound to the leg and traded his rifle for a law degree. He didn't practice in family court. He practiced in scorched earth, corporate litigation. He was exactly what I needed. We met at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. I looked like hell, 3 days of stubble, wrinkled clothes. Victor looked like he just stepped out of a magazine, sipping black coffee. He listened to my story without interrupting. He didn't flinch when I told him about the wheelchair. He didn't blink when I told him about the police. But when I played him the audio recording from the bedroom, Morgan talking about shipping Oliver to Zurich and unlocking the trust, his eyes went cold. That's intent. Victor said, tapping his pen on the table. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Kidnapping, effectively. But it's circumstantial. A judge might say they're just discussing options for a sick child. It's not enough, I said, rubbing my face. I know. We need the smoking gun, Victor said. Or in this case, the smoking wrench. Who tampered with the wheelchair? I fixed it before we left the dock, I said. But someone loosened it. Morgan wouldn't get her hands dirty with grease. She's too prissy. The crew, Victor said. Someone on that boat knows something. People like Morgan don't do the manual labor. They hire it. I remembered the deckhand. Kyle. The young guy with the shaved head who wouldn't look me in the eye when I boarded. The one who Morgan barked orders at. Kyle, I said. The deckhand. Find him, Victor said. Squeeze him. But don't break him. We need him as a witness, not a victim. I spent the next 6 hours staking out the marina. I watched the Gilded Lady bobbing in its slip. The captain was gone. The boat was dark. But around 2,200 hours, I saw a shadow moving on the back deck. It was Kyle. He was scrubbing the teak floor, looking over his shoulder every few seconds. I waited until he finished and walked down the dock toward the parking lot. I followed him. He got into a beat-up Honda Civic. I didn't tail him. I knew where he was going. There was only one bar open this late near the docks, the Rusty Anchor. I walked in 10 minutes later. Kyle was sitting at the bar, nursing a beer, looking miserable. He jumped when I sat on the stool next to him. Rough night? I asked, staring straight ahead at the bottles. He froze. He recognized my voice. He started to stand up. I gotta go. I put a hand on his shoulder. I didn't squeeze hard, but I let him feel the weight of it. Sit down, Kyle. He sat. He was shaking. Look, man, I don't know anything. I just washed the boat. You washed the boat, I said calmly. And you saw my sister-in-law near that wheelchair before we boarded, didn't you? I didn't see nothing, he stammered, his eyes darting to the door. You know what the penalty is for accessory to attempted murder? I asked, turning to face him. 15 years, Kyle. Minimum. And in prison, guys like you don't do well. I didn't touch the chair, he blurted out. I swear. But you saw who did. He looked down at his beer. She paid me. The lady. The blonde one. She gave me $5,000 cash just to look the other way while she adjusted the ramp. Morgan, I said. She said it was a prank. Kyle whispered, tears forming in his eyes. She said the chair would just get stuck and it would be funny. I didn't know the kid was going to go in the water. I swear to God, I didn't know. Did you keep the money? I asked. He nodded slowly. Do you still have it? It's in my glove box. I haven't touched it. It feels dirty. Here's what's going to happen, Kyle, I said, leaning in close. You're going to give me that money as evidence, and you're going to write down exactly what happened. Everything she said, everything she did, and then you're going to come with me to a lawyer. She'll kill me, he whispered. She knows people. She knows rich people. I corrected him. I know dangerous people. You stick with me, you walk away with probation. You stick with her, you go down for attempted murder of a handicapped child. He looked at me. He saw the resolve in my eyes. He saw the soldier. Okay, he breathed. Okay, I'll talk. An hour later, we were in Victor's office. Kyle was spilling everything. Not just about the wheelchair. About the conversation he overheard between Morgan and Tessa on the bridge while I was downstairs. Is the insurance policy definitely active? Morgan had asked. Yes, Tessa had replied. If he dies, the trust dissolves to the mother. We had them. We had the motive. We had the mechanic. We had the tape. This is good, Victor said, reviewing Kyle's statement. This is a nail in the coffin, but we need to make sure the lid is nailed shut before we bury them. How? I asked. We need a confession from the primaries, Victor said. We need them to admit it when they think they've won. When people think they've won, they get sloppy. They get arrogant. I thought about the list of names I found. The realtors. The assisted living facility. They want me to sign over custody, I said. They think I'm broken. They think I'm desperate. So be broken, Victor smiled, a cold, predatory smile. Give them what they want. Invite them to a peace offering. Tell them you're ready to sign the papers. But we do it on our terms. In a place where they can't run. I knew exactly where to take them. There's a new restaurant downtown. The Abyssal. It's built underground, surrounded by a massive, floor-to-ceiling aquarium tank. Sharks, rays, barracudas. It's dark, expensive, and isolating. I'll set it up, I said. A farewell dinner. Before I disappear. Perfect, Victor said. I'll have the papers drawn up. Fake ones, of course. And I'll have a few friends from the district attorney's office dining at the next table. I walked out of the office feeling the first spark of hope in days. The game had changed. They thought they were the sharks. They were about to find out they were just the bait. I called Tessa the next morning. It rang 4 times before she picked up. Hunter. Her voice was cautious. I'm done, Tessa, I said, making my voice sound hollow. Broken. I can't fight the city. I can't fight Morgan's lawyers. I just want Oliver to be safe. Silence on the line. She was checking my tone, looking for the trap. I'm sleeping in my truck. I continued, adding a tremor to my voice. I have no money. I have no home. You win. If signing the papers means Oliver gets the care he needs, I'll do it. You will. She sounded shocked. Yes, but I want to do it properly. I want to see you both one last time. To say goodbye, and to hand over the rights to the trust fund directly. No lawyers getting in the middle. The trust fund. Her voice perked up instantly. That was the trigger. Yeah, I found the paperwork. I can sign my executorship over to you. That way the money unlocks immediately for Oliver's care. Okay, she said, the greed seeping through the phone like poison. Okay, Hunter. That sounds sensible. Meet me at the Abyssal tonight. 8 p.m. Private room. The Abyssal. That's expensive, Hunter. It's my last meal as a father, I said. Let me have this. Fine. We'll be there. I hung up and stared at the phone. It was almost too easy. Greed makes people blind. I spent the afternoon prepping. I went to a thrift store and bought a cheap, ill-fitting suit. I shaved, but badly, leaving nicks on my chin. I wanted to look like a man who was trying to hold it together, but failing. Victor met me outside the restaurant at 7 p.m. He handed me a thick legal folder. These are the transfer documents, he said. Or at least, they look like them. Underneath the cover page, it's actually a printout of the penal code for conspiracy to commit murder. Nice touch, I said. The room is wired, Victor whispered. Cameras in the sconces. Microphones in the flower arrangement. The DA is in the surveillance van out back. My team is at the table right outside the door. And Oliver? I asked. He's safe. My paralegal is with him at the foster center. The moment we get the confession, the emergency order is voided. You get him back tonight. I took a deep breath. Let's go fishing. I sat alone in the private dining room of the Abyssal. The walls were thick glass, holding back thousands of gallons of water. A massive tiger shark glided past my shoulder, its dead black eye staring at me. It felt fitting. At 8:05 p.m., the door opened. Morgan walked in first. She looked victorious. She was wearing a red dress that cost more than my truck. Tessa followed, looking nervous but determined in black. Well, Morgan said, sitting down opposite me without a greeting. This is quite the venue for a surrender. Hello, Morgan. Tessa, I said, keeping my head down. Let's make this quick, Morgan said, snapping her fingers for a waiter who wasn't there. Where are the papers? On the table, I said, gesturing to the folder. Tessa reached for it, but I put my hand on top of it. First, I said softly, I need to know he's going to be okay. I need to know you aren't going to send him away. He's going to the best facility money can buy, Morgan said, her eyes fixed on the folder. In Europe, they have specialists. Zurich. I asked. Morgan froze. How did you know that? I did some research, I lied. Just promise me you won't hurt him. Like on the boat. Oh, for God's sake, Hunter. Morgan laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Nobody hurt him. He's a clumsy child. And honestly, even if he had drowned, it would have been a mercy. For everyone. Tessa flinched. Morgan, don't. Why not? Morgan snapped at her sister. He's signing the papers. It's done. We don't have to pretend anymore. The kid is a burden, Tessa. You said it yourself. I looked at Tessa. Did you say that? Tessa looked at the shark swimming behind me. She took a sip of water. It's hard, Hunter. You're never there. And with the money, the trust money, we could start over. A real life. Without the chair. Without the hospitals. So he has to die for you to be free. I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He doesn't have to die. Tessa said quickly. Just go away. Somewhere nice. But if he died, Morgan interrupted, leaning forward, her eyes gleaming. The money doubles. That's the clause, isn't it, Hunter? Accidental death benefits. That's right, I said. Double. So, Morgan smiled. Maybe the boat was a missed opportunity. But there are always other accidents. There it was. The confession. Cold. Calculated. Recorded. I slowly took my hand off the folder. Sign here, I said, pushing it toward them. And it's all yours. Morgan grabbed a pen. She didn't even read the first page. She flipped to the back, signed her name with a flourish, and pushed it to Tessa. Tessa hesitated, her hand shaking, but then she signed too. Done, Morgan said, sitting back. Now, give us the account keys. I looked at them. I looked at the shark circling behind the glass. I don't have the keys, I said, my voice changing. The broken man disappeared. The ranger came back. What? Morgan frowned. I don't have the keys, I said louder, standing up. Because I'm not the executor anymore. Who is? Tessa asked, panic rising in her voice. The district attorney, I said. Morgan's face went pale. What are you talking about? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote control. I pressed a button. The large TV screen mounted on the wall of the private room flickered to life. But it wasn't a TV channel. It was the video feed from the marina. The confession of Kyle, the deckhand. She paid me $5,000. Kyle's voice filled the room. She told me to look away while she loosened the screws. Morgan stood up, knocking her chair over. This is fake. This is illegal. Then the audio changed. It was the recording from my bedroom. Once the state declares Hunter unfit, we ship the kid to Zurich. And we are free. Tessa put her hands over her mouth, backing away toward the door. You bugged my house, she screamed. My house, I corrected her. And now, ladies, I'd like you to meet my friends. I looked at the door. It opened. But it wasn't a waiter. It was Victor. And behind him, for uniformed police officers. Morgan Miller, Tessa Hunter, Victor said, his voice smooth as silk. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. Morgan looked at the cops, then at the glass wall of the aquarium. She looked like a rat trapped in a maze. She grabbed a steak knife from the table. Stay back, she shrieked, pointing it at me. I won't go. It was her idea. It was Tessa. Liar. Tessa screamed, lunging at her sister. You made me do it. They were tearing each other apart. The wolves were eating the wolves. I just stood there, watching the shark glide by one more time. It's over, I said. And for the first time in a week, I believed it. The chaos in the private dining room was short-lived but intense. Morgan, realizing the knife was useless against 4 armed officers, dropped it with a clatter. But she didn't go quietly. As the officers moved in to cuff her, she started screaming, primal, guttural shrieks that echoed off the glass walls. He set me up. He's crazy. He's the one who hurt the boy. The lead officer, a no-nonsense sergeant named Miller, spun her around and slammed the cuffs on. You have the right to remain silent, ma'am. I suggest you use it. Tessa was different. She didn't fight. She just collapsed. She sank to her knees on the expensive carpet, sobbing into her hands. When the officer touched her shoulder, she looked up at me. Her mascara was running down her face in black streaks. Hunter, she pleaded, her voice broken. Please. I was scared. She made me. I love you. I love Oliver. I looked down at her. I remembered the woman I met 10 years ago. I remembered the vows. But then I remembered Oliver shivering in the Atlantic, begging me not to let go. You watched him fall. I said, my voice cold. And you didn't jump. That's not love, Tessa. That's business. I turned my back on her. Get them out of here. They were dragged out, creating a spectacle through the main dining room. I watched them go through the glass door, then I sat back down at the table. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline dump. Victor sat down opposite me and poured a glass of the expensive wine Morgan had ordered but never drank. Well, he said, taking a sip. That went well. Is it really over? I asked. The recording is admissible because it was in your own home, where you have an expectation of authority, Victor said. Kyle's testimony corroborates the physical tampering. And their little performance, just now. The DA was listening live. They're done, Hunter. Morgan is looking at 20 years. Tessa, maybe 10 if she flips, but she'll lose all rights to Oliver. Oliver, I said, standing up. I need to get him. My car is outside, Victor said. Let's go get your boy. The drive to the foster center was the longest 20 minutes of my life. When we arrived, it was late, almost midnight. The facility was quiet. The social worker on duty looked tired. She checked Victor's paperwork, then checked it again. She made a call to the DA. Finally, she nodded. He's in room 4B, she said softly. He's been asking for you. I walked down the hallway. It smelled like disinfectant and floor wax. I pushed open the door to 4B. Oliver was awake. He was lying in a strange bed, staring at the ceiling. His wheelchair was parked in the corner. When he heard the door, he flinched. But when he saw it was me, he tried to sit up. Dad. I crossed the room in 2 strides and wrapped him in my arms. I held him tighter than I ever had. I buried my face in his hair. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here. It's over. We're going home. Mom, he asked, his voice small. I pulled back. I couldn't lie to him. Not anymore. Mom isn't coming back, Bud, I said gently. She made some bad choices. She and Aunt Morgan are going away for a long time. He looked at me. He didn't cry. He just nodded slowly, like he had known all along. She didn't wave, he whispered. What? When I fell, Aunt Morgan waved. But Mom just turned around. My heart broke all over again. I know, Oliver. I know. Can we go? He asked. I don't like this place. Yeah, I said, lifting him out of the bed and into his chair. Let's get out of here. We didn't go back to the house. It was a crime scene now, filled with bad memories and hidden microphones. I drove us to a motel near the beach. A simple place, clean and safe. Oliver fell asleep instantly. I sat in the chair by the door, watching him breathe. I didn't sleep. I kept my hand near my waistband, even though I knew the threat was gone. The next morning, the news broke. Eris and sister arrested in shocking Shark Tank plot. My phone blew up. Calls from reporters. Calls from old army buddies who saw the news. I ignored them all. I only answered one call. It was from the insurance company. Mr. Hunter, the agent said. We've been contacted by the district attorney regarding the fraud investigation on your wife's policy. We are freezing all assets related to the trust fund pending the trial. However, the grandfather's original stipulation stands. As the sole legal guardian, you now have access to the emergency medical portion of the fund for Oliver's recovery. How much? I asked. Enough, the agent said. Enough for the best doctors. Enough for a new house. Enough to start over. I hung up. I looked at Oliver, who was eating pancakes from a styrofoam container. Hey, I said. He looked up, syrup on his chin. How would you like to move? I asked. Somewhere with no boats. Maybe the mountains. He smiled. A real smile. Can I get a dog? Yeah. I laughed, feeling the weight finally lift off my chest. Yeah, buddy. You can get a dog. But before the mountains, there was one last thing we had to do. We had to face them in court. The arraignment was set for Monday. I wasn't looking forward to it. Seeing Tessa in an orange jumpsuit. Seeing the ruin of my family on display. But I owed it to Oliver. We had to look them in the eye one last time and show them that we were still standing. Monday morning, the courthouse steps were a zoo. Reporters swarmed like ants on a dropped candy bar. Mr. Hunter. Is it true your wife tried to drown your son? Mr. Hunter, over here. I pushed Oliver's wheelchair through the crowd, shielding his face with my jacket. Victor was right beside us, acting as a battering ram in an Italian suit. Ignore them, Victor muttered. Eyes forward. Inside, the courtroom was packed. The air was stale and tense. We took our seats in the front row. I held Oliver's hand. His palm was sweaty. You don't have to look at them, I whispered. I want to, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. I want them to see me. The bailiff called the court to order. All rise. The side door opened. Morgan came out first. She looked diminished. The expensive red dress was gone, replaced by a gray county jumpsuit. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and without makeup, her face looked sharp and haggard. She glared at the audience, her arrogance bruised but not broken. Then came Tessa. She looked like a ghost. She was shuffling, her eyes fixed on the floor. She looked 20 years older. When she passed our bench, she hesitated. She looked up and saw Oliver. Her lips parted. Ollie, keep moving. Inmate. The guard snapped, nudging her forward. Oliver didn't flinch. He just watched her, his face a mask of stone. I squeezed his hand. The hearing was short. The charges were read. Attempted first-degree murder. Conspiracy. Insurance fraud. Child abuse. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Davis, laid out the preliminary evidence. The recordings. The mechanic's testimony. The safety rail report. Your Honor, Davis said. These two women plotted to murder a disabled child for financial gain. They are a flight risk and a danger to the community. We request bail be denied. Morgan's lawyer, a sleazy guy I recognized from billboards, stood up. Objection. My client is a respected member of the community. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. The judge raised an eyebrow. Counselor, I have reviewed the transcript where your client discusses feeding the victim to sharks. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a horror movie. The gavel banged. Bail denied. Remanded to custody until trial. As they were led away, Morgan stopped. She turned to me. You think you won? She hissed, loud enough for the whole room to hear. You have nothing. You're a grunt with a broken kid. You'll be begging on the street in a year. I stood up. The room went silent. Morgan, I said, my voice calm and carrying to the back of the room. I have my son, and tonight, I'm going to sleep just fine. Can you say the same? She snarled something, but the guards dragged her out. Tessa didn't look back. The door slammed shut. It was over. The legal war would drag on for months, maybe years, but they were in a cage. They couldn't hurt us anymore. We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. The reporters were still there, but I didn't care. I felt lighter. Dad, Oliver asked as we reached the truck. Yeah, Bud. Can we go to the ocean? I stopped. The ocean? Are you sure? Yeah, he said. I want to see it from the shore. Safe. Just to say goodbye to it. I looked at him. He was braver than I ever was. Okay, I said. Let's go. We drove to a quiet beach, miles away from the marina. I parked the truck and carried Oliver down to the sand. I sat him in his chair, and we pushed right up to the water line, where the foam hissed against the wheels. The ocean was calm today, blue and endless. It didn't look like a monster anymore. It just looked like water. It's big, Oliver said. Yeah. I'm not scared of it, he said. Not anymore. I beat it. You did, I said, putting my arm around him. You beat it. You beat them. We sat there for a long time, watching the tide come in. Dad. Yeah. What now? I looked at the horizon. Now we live. We use the trust fund. We get you the best physical therapy in the country. We buy that house in the mountains. We get that dog. A German shepherd, he asked. Sure. A ranger dog. He laughed. It was the best sound I had heard in years. 6 months later. The trial was a media circus, but the verdict was swift. Guilty on all counts. Morgan got 25 years. Tessa got 15. I didn't go to the sentencing. I didn't need to see it. I was busy. I was in Colorado, standing on the porch of a log cabin overlooking a valley of pine trees. The air was crisp and clean. Dad, look. I turned around. Oliver was on the specially adapted deck. He wasn't in his wheelchair. He was standing, holding onto the railing, his legs braced in new, high-tech exoskeletal supports we had bought with the settlement money. He was shaky, but he was upright. Look at me, he yelled, grinning. A German Shepherd puppy was running circles around his legs, barking happily. I walked over and stood next to him. We looked out at the mountains. You look good, soldier, I said. I feel good, he said. We had survived the betrayal. We had survived the shark tank. We had walked through the fire and come out the other side. Not just alive, but stronger. I put my hand on his shoulder. Ready for dinner? Yeah, he said. But no fish. I laughed. Deal. Steak tonight. As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and violet, I realized that revenge isn't about hurting the people who hurt you. It's about living a life so good that they don't matter anymore. Morgan and Tessa were rotting in a cell, thinking about the past. We were standing in the sun, looking at the future. And the view was beautiful. Life in the mountains was quiet, but it was the good kind of quiet, the kind that heals. But the past has a way of echoing, even in the Rockies. It had been a year since the sentencing. We had settled into a routine. Physical therapy for Oliver 3 times a week. Hiking on the accessible trails on the weekends. And Scout, the German Shepherd, growing from a clumsy ball of fur into a loyal protector who never left Oliver's side. One Tuesday morning, a letter arrived in the mailbox. No return address. Just a prison stamp. Department of Corrections. I held it in my hand, staring at the familiar, jagged handwriting. Morgan. I debated burning it, just tossing it into the fireplace and watching it turn to ash. But curiosity, or maybe vigilance, got the better of me. I opened it. Hunter, they tell me I have a parole hearing in 10 years. They tell me to show remorse. I don't feel remorse. I feel cheated. You think you won, but you didn't. Tessa is falling apart in here. She cries every night for the boy. She blames me, but we both know she wanted the money just as much. She just didn't have the stomach for the work. Enjoy the money, Hunter. Enjoy the view. But remember, money runs out. And luck runs out. I have a lot of time to think in here. A lot of time to plan. Give my love to the cripple. And I read it twice. Then I folded it neatly and walked into the kitchen. Oliver was eating cereal, reading a comic book. He looked healthy. His shoulders were broader from the therapy. His eyes were bright. What's that? He asked, pointing at the letter with his spoon. Just junk mail, I said. Nothing important. I walked to the wood stove and tossed the letter in. I watched the flames lick the edges, curling the paper, turning Morgan's hateful words into smoke. Hey, Dad. Oliver said. Yeah. I was thinking. About Mom. I froze. We hadn't talked about her in months. What about her? Do you think she misses me? I looked at him. He was 15 now, old enough to understand the world, but young enough to still want his mother. I think, I said carefully, that part of her does. The part that was still a mom. But the part that listened to Morgan, that part was stronger. He nodded slowly. I don't hate her, he said. I used to. But now, I just feel sorry for her. She chose the wrong team. Yeah, I said. She did. I'm glad I'm on your team, Dad. I smiled, feeling a lump in my throat. Me too, bud. Me too. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Victor. Hunter, he said, his voice serious. I have some news. It's about Tessa. My stomach tightened. What happened? There was an incident in the prison yard, Victor said. She was attacked. By another inmate. It's bad, Hunter. She's in the ICU. I sat down on the porch steps. Is she going to make it? It's touch and go. But she's asking for you. And Oliver. I looked out at the yard where Oliver was throwing a ball for Scout. No, I said firmly. Absolutely not. Hunter, it might be a deathbed confession, Victor said. Or just a goodbye. She made her choice, I said. I am not bringing my son back into her orbit. I am not letting her manipulate him one last time to ease her guilty conscience. He is healing. I won't break that scab open. I understand, Victor said. I'll tell the chaplain. Do that. Tell her. Tell her we're safe. That's all she needs to know. I hung up. It felt cold, maybe cruel. But my job wasn't to be a husband anymore. It was to be a father. And a father protects the perimeter. I went outside. The sun was warm on my face. Hey, I called out. You want to try the new trail today? The steep one. Oliver looked up, grinning. You think you can keep up with me? I'll try, I said. We headed up the mountain, leaving the phone, the letter, and the pass down in the valley. We climbed higher, the air getting thinner, the view getting wider. At the top, we stopped to drink water. The world stretched out below us, green and gold and blue. We're high up, Oliver said, looking down. Yeah, I said. Nobody can touch us up here, he said. That's right, I said. We're untouchable. And for the first time since that day on the dock, since the shark tank, since the courtroom, I truly believed it. The war was over. We had won the peace. The news came 3 days later. Tessa didn't make it. I didn't tell Oliver immediately. I waited until we were sitting by the fire that night, the wind howling outside the cabin, safe and warm inside. When I told him, he didn't cry. He just stared into the flames for a long time. It's weird, he said finally. I feel lighter. It's closure, I said. The book is closed. We didn't go to the funeral. Morgan was denied leave to attend, so Tessa was buried by the state in a small plot near the prison. It was a lonely end for a woman who had wanted everything. A week later, a package arrived from Victor. It was a thick envelope. Inside was a letter from the prison warden and a small, sealed plastic bag. She had this on her when she passed. She fought the guards to keep it. We thought the next of kin should have it. I opened the bag. Inside was a single, crumpled photograph. It was old, from before the accident. It was me, Tessa, and a 10-year-old Oliver standing on a beach, smiling, squinting into the sun. On the back, in shaky handwriting, she had written, I'm sorry. I showed it to Oliver. He took it, running his thumb over his mother's face. She kept it, he asked. Yeah, I said. She kept it. He walked over to the mantelpiece above the fireplace. He placed the photo there, right next to his debate trophy and a picture of Scout. It belongs here, he said. Not because of who she became, but because of who she was. I put my hand on his shoulder. You're a good man, Oliver. Better than me. I learned from the best, he said. We walked out onto the deck. The night sky was ablaze with stars, the kind you only see in the high country. No light pollution, no noise, just the vast, silent universe. Oliver gripped the railing, standing tall in his leg braces. He took a deep breath of the pine-scented air. Dad, yeah, we're going to be okay, aren't we? I looked at him, strong, resilient, forgiving. I looked at the life we had built from the wreckage. Yeah, Oliver, I said, smiling. We're going to be more than okay. We're free. We stood there for a while longer, a father and son watching the galaxy turn. Two survivors who had faced the sharks and lived to tell the tale. The past was a ghost. The future was ours. What would you have done if you were Hunter? Would you have forgiven Tessa at the very end, or was her betrayal too deep to ever come back from? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below.